Good morning and welcome to the VCB's 2020 Hurricane Workshop. We're doing this virtually this year, and we have a fantastic lineup of panelists for you. It's almost hard to believe that it's already hurricane season. I know it's come on us very quickly. We've been dealing with just a few other issues right now, and certainly don't want to be unprepared for a hurricane in light of our current situation. So we appreciate those who are participating in this workshop. I know we're going to record this probably. We're going to record this, right, Pam? And we will have this available to those who were unable to join us this morning. But we're grateful that you're here, and I'm going to turn it over to the VCB's Hurricane Goddess, Pam Brown, and she's going to take the lead. But thank you very much for being here. We appreciate your partnership on this.
Good morning, all. Thank you. This is something different for all of us, and I'm kind of excited. It seems like we have a few more participants this year, and so this is going to be a little different than we've had in the past years, but you're going to recognize some faces. Lee Mayfield with the Lee County Emergency Management Public Safety. He's the director of the Emergency Management crew. And Dan Noah with National Weather Service out of Ruskin near Tampa. So they're going to be with us today. And Amanda, you want to advance to the next slide? Or can I do that? There we go. Okay, so here's today's agenda. Dan's going to be up first talking about the wonderful weather and what we have to look forward to. And Lee's going to give us some updates about dealing with hurricane season during a pandemic and some other useful information. And then Josh and I will wrap it up at the end with how the VCB can contribute to our cause. And Tommy Castle is also in our group. He is not with us today. He is working with the CARES package folks. And so he's on duty there, but he is with us in spirit. And so we will continue forth. Dan, are you ready to roll?
I am ready to go.
Hey, let's go to Dan's PowerPoint. Amanda, you want to make sure that we're recording this session? I didn't hear her say she was recording.
We are automatically recording, folks.
Oh, excellent. Okay, terrific. Thanks.
So as Amanda gets the slides up, the NOAA hurricane forecast for this season comes out at 11 a.m. this morning. So we're going to talk about the Colorado State University forecast on today's call, but I suspect the NOAA forecast will be similar.
There we go.
All right, Dan, you should be all set.
Okay, I don't have the little arrows.
See if you can use your...
Oh, the keypad, yes. Perfect. Oh boy, what happened here? Okay, what you see on the screen is Tropical Storm Arthur spinning its way toward the Outer Banks of North Carolina. And that's our first named storm of the year. If you look over Florida, you can see the sea breeze fronts moving inland as we get toward our rainy season. This ought to kick in relatively soon. Let's see, my keys are not working, Amanda. Perfect. So looking at the long-range forecast, Colorado State's going for 16 named storms, normal is 12. 8 becoming hurricanes, 4 becoming major hurricanes. Next slide. The reason for this is we're going to have weaker than normal winds aloft more often. Strong winds aloft can shear apart tropical cyclones because the bottom of the storm is moving to the west, and strong winds aloft move the storm to the east. So they're moving in two different directions. This is a response to the developing La Nina that's expected to be in place by the peak of hurricane season. And La Nina is the cooling of the tropical Pacific waters. That changes where the thunderstorms form, and that deflects the upper level jet stream, which is a fast moving river of air aloft. And so that jet stream is going to be well north of Florida more often this season and leaving weaker winds aloft and hurricanes like that. And finally, the fuel for the storm is warm tropical Atlantic water, and we are somewhat warmer than normal. We always say prepare for one storm each year because these long-range forecasts, we can't tell you where they're going to strike or when. And it's for all of the Atlantic basin. It's from Brownsville, Texas to Africa. That's 5,000 miles. So we could have a ton of storms and not one impacts the Fort Myers area. So prepare for one storm each year and go from there. You're going to see on social media, especially, the spaghetti plots, and people are going to post the worst possible case scenario on social media. But we ask that you just use the Hurricane Center forecast. There's 175 years of experience down there in Miami, and they did an outstanding job with Tropical Storm Arthur. If we look at the next slide, we will see that we should focus on the impacts and not the forecast cone. So the forecast cone is just where the center of the storm is likely to be. But the impacts, and as you experienced with Irma, Irma was about the size of Texas, and the impacts went well away from the cone. So this year, we're going to be focusing, not so much saying, oh, we got a category 2, category 3, that just describes the wind. We're going to be focusing on the impacts and communicating that. So there's Irma again, storm surge down in the Keys, 4 to 6 feet. But look at Jacksonville. They had 3 to 5 feet of surge come into downtown Jacksonville and cause flooding for about 12 hours. Now, if we look at the rain impacts, that skinny black line is at the actual track of Irma. The heaviest rains are along and to the right of the storm track, and we had widespread 15 to 22 inches, and you experienced a lot of overland flooding after Irma. So I want you to close your eyes for a second. What do you see when you think of a hurricane? A lot of people think wind. That's what they experience. That's what they talk about, category 2 storm. But if I hit the key one more time, 9 out of 10 US tropical cyclone fatalities are due to water. So we want you to change it to water if you were thinking about wind. Storm surge is our biggest threat. You had a threat for 14, oh, go back one. You had a threat for 14 feet of storm surge with Hurricane Irma. And luckily it curved into Marco Island and you had offshore flow. We had over 1,200 fatalities in storm surge with Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans and Alabama and Mississippi. So storm surge is our biggest threat. But in most tropical storms and hurricanes, it's the flooding rain that kills more people than anything else. If we look at the next slide, we will see that this 3-year period, 83% of the fatalities were due to flooding rain. Only 4% were due to storm surge. So storm surge is still our biggest threat, but flooding rain is what gets most people in most storms. And in the next slide, you'll see where are they when they have unfortunate things happen to them. They're in their vehicles. So over half are vehicle related. So if a person is driving across flooded roads and tropical rain bands are coming over them, and they're the ones that are most at risk. If the roads are flooded, we just say stay home. And that can be hard if, say, you're a single mom, your power goes out, your kids are crying, and you just want to drive to your mom's house because she has air conditioning, but you're going to go across flooded roads. That's very dangerous. Next slide. So here's Hurricane Michael, only the 4th major hurricane to hit the United States since 1935. And it happened in October. You know, normally people say, oh, the hurricane season's winding down. You only get Category 1 or Category 2 storms in October. No, we actually had Category 3 winds make it all the way to southwest Georgia with Michael. The bad thing is, look at the next slide, the storm surge forecast. You know, why didn't Fort Myers Beach get 14 feet of storm surge? Well, if you look at what we do is we take the perfect forecast and we run hundreds of simulations of storm surge based on changing the track, making the eye wall big, making it small, making the storm go fast, making it go slow. And when we did that, everywhere that's red on this map is over 9 feet of storm surge. And that's when typically you start to see a lot of homes wash off their foundations. And if you click one more time, you'll see just 2 of these simulations. Just a small change in track makes a huge difference on storm surge. And even hours before landfall, we can't tell you where that exact area is going to be. So we have to use probabilities. So in the Big Bend area, if we use the perfect forecast on the left, or on the top one, they would only had 8 feet. But if it went to the right of Apalachicola, they would have had 20 feet. So a huge difference in impacts with small changes in hurricane tracks. On the next slide, you'll see this is the potential storm surge flooding map from Hurricane Irma. And you can see there's a lot of red going over Captiva, Sanibel, Bonita Beach, Fort Myers Beach, and up into Fort Myers and Cape Coral. That was the potential. That is not the forecast. So when you see these maps on TV or on social media, that's not what we expect. That's the 1 in 10 times the surge will be higher than this. 9 out of 10 times the surge will be lower than this. But surge has such a great impact, we have to have a small probability of a high impact event is why we discuss storm surge in this way. On the next slide, you'll see what the storm surge looked like in Mexico Beach. And the surge had already come in, and now you've got hours and hours of pounding waves that continue to take homes off their foundations. And the next slide, I'll show you what it looked like on the, well, not the next slide, but the reason for this is water is heavy. 1 cubic yard of water weighs 1,700 pounds. And so if you imagine this is a fish tank and this 1,700 pounds is coming at you at 20 miles an hour and you try to stop it, what happens? Now imagine millions of these fish tanks pushing on buildings. Next slide. This is from the USGS. Every red dot you see on the screen is a house that was washed off its foundation in Mexico Beach. So the storm surge forecast we give you includes the tide, but it does not include the waves. So we had 19 feet of water was the highest watermark we had. That combines the surge, tide, and the waves. So keep that in mind. Next slide. This is what it looked like on the ground. What's the chance of that happening in the Fort Myers area? It's 1/2 of 1% chance each year, so 1 in 200 chance. You have had a much bigger issue with this than Tampa Bay. I mean, you had Charlie in 2004, and then you had Irma. So the threat was there both times, and thankfully it didn't happen. Next slide. So we're all sick of the hurricane. The hurricane moves on. Lee Mayfield's group, that's when they really get busy for a very long time. But for most of us, it's past. I'm safe now. I can breathe. But that's not usually the case. The next slide will show that indirect fatalities not associated directly with the hurricane or tropical storm. We tend to have more indirect fatalities after the storm than fatalities during the storm in most tropical storms and hurricanes. And a third of those are cardiovascular incidents. Next slide. So now the death by age, this is a horrible statistic. 8 times as many victims age over 60 as there are under 21 years old. So it's our older population that is most at risk after a hurricane. The next slide will show cardiovascular percentage. In this case, it's 47%. And then it's evacuation. It's a real problem. So people that are completely healthy and older, as we see with COVID as well, are the ones most at risk. Next slide. And the percentage is 39% of the indirect deaths associated with evacuations are over the age of 80. If you have elderly parents and they don't have a hurricane plan, they're going to be under much more stress before, during, and after the event. So if they don't have a plan, you make one for them and take care of them and make sure that their stress levels are reduced. Next slide. So what should you know about National Weather Service tropical products for this hurricane season? Well, let's see, Arthur's scratched off the list already. Bertha is going to be our next named storm. Next slide. Social scientists said that our potential storm surge flooding map is a mouthful to say, and also it's not a good way to communicate. So the Hurricane Center is going to have a new graphic similar to this one this year. It's going to be on their page once a hurricane watch is issued. They're not going to typically do this for tropical storms, but hurricane watches, they're issued 48 to 60 hours before impact. And it's a nice, easy way to say what is the threat. So in this case, this is when Hurricane Michael was by the tip of Cuba, the western tip of Cuba, and they were going for 6 to 9 feet of storm surge at Mexico Beach. That's the 1 in 10 chance. 1 out of 10 times it's going to be higher than that. And we saw that as we had a better idea of where Michael was going. So this is not what is expected. This is the reasonable worst case scenario. It's not the worst case scenario, but it's the 1 in 10 chance of water reaching this height. Next. The Hurricane Center has added another forecast point onto their track forecast. It used to be every 12 hours for the first 48 hours, then every 24 hours. But we found a need to have a 60-hour forecast for a variety of reasons. And then also it improves the storm surge forecast. So that's new. Next slide. The Weather Prediction Center works in tandem with the National Hurricane Center. They do the rainfall with the storms. We do not like red and purple. You saw, moderate flooding after Irma, and some places saw high flooding. So we do not like that, because most tropical storms and hurricanes, it's the flooding rain that kills more people than anything else. But if we're going to get flash flooding in Florida, it's typically associated with a tropical cyclone. Next slide. Looking at emergency preparedness, for COVID, we're preparing for, a virus, but now you have to prepare for a hurricane. I would get your bottled water now so that you don't have to worry about competing with everybody else like everybody's doing for toilet paper right now. The shelves are empty. On the next slide, the best thing you can do for your business is to ensure that your employees are prepared. If they're prepared, they're more likely to come back. So make a list for your hurricane kit, have them organize important documents, put them into a big Ziploc bag so they don't get wet. And Lee County has a wonderful app that Lee Mayfield will probably talk about. I can't remember the name, but you start the app and it tells you if you're in an evacuation zone or not. And with that, that's my last slide, and I'm willing to take any questions anyone may have at this time.
Anybody have any questions for Dan about the forecast or any of the products that National Weather Service has to offer? Okay, Dan, thank you very much. That was terrific. Enjoyed that. Lee, before we go to Lee, I just wanted to let everybody know that on the panel for your webinar, down close to the bottom should be 2 handouts that you're able to download. The first one is the COVID-19 hurricane preparation guidelines from the CDC, and also is how to create a hurricane plan PDF that we have listed on our leavevcb.com website. And you know, for those who have attended this workshop in the past, you know I have a question to ask all of you. Amanda, you want to put the first question poll up for us? I'm going to give her a minute to get those rounded out there. There we go. Okay, everybody, do you know where your hurricane manual is located? Yes or no? So you have a few seconds to answer this question. And Amanda, you can let us know how the answers are coming in.
Absolutely. Good news is we're trending yes.
All right. Okay, another couple seconds. You don't want to hear me sing again. That's just rotten.
Okay, the answers have
Okay,
stopped.
we're done.
We're going to close it. And the results are 86% of folks know where their hurricane manual is, and 14% of folks do not.
Okay. Well, hey, that's still a good number. The 14% need to, when you get back into your offices, hopefully that'll be sooner than later, you can find that little puppy. Okay, now we are up for Mr. Mayfield to let us know what's going on with the EOC.
All right, just doing a microphone check. Pam, can you hear me?
We can.
All right, thanks. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having us. Just a quick thanks to Tam and Pam both. Our VCB has really built an awesome program over the really course of decades to be prepared for hurricanes, and they were doing this before getting the tourism partners involved was cool even. So it's a great team to be a part of, and it shows that it's not just our small emergency management staff here at Lee County. It's all our departments and jurisdictions and agencies who pitch in and help. And Dan's presentation was great. That was such a good, very clear snapshot of Hurricanes 101 and things we should be thinking about. We've been super busy, as everyone has, this last 2 or 3 months on COVID-19 issues. And as we thankfully get into more of the recovery mode on that, we're able to spend more time with our staff on hurricane season preparedness and any COVID-19 considerations or twists, I guess you could call them, that would challenge us this hurricane season. This past Tuesday, we did a big media push with all the TV and a lot of print and even radio venues to push out some initial messaging on hurricane season this year. We know it's been a long couple months, and there may be some greater public concern going into hurricane season this year. And a lot of the questions we've got related to, what are you going to do differently based on COVID-19 and the virus possibly still being an issue? The good news is, knock on wood, we still have a little hurricane season, so we can still continue to plan and consider. I look at it as if you rewound the clock 2 or 3 months from where we are today. We were in a whole different scenario with COVID-19. Thankfully, that didn't, the worst case scenarios didn't pan out on that for us in Southwest Florida. But if you were to fast forward 2 or 3 months, who knows where we're going to be. So our goal here at Lee County going into this hurricane season is to make sure we have a number of options to be able to respond effectively if the virus is still an issue. And we'll talk about some of those changes specifically related to evacuation and sheltering efforts. One of the key points, though, is there are a lot of things that really are still unchanged this hurricane season, and there are a lot of things that we preach year after year that we are still going to hammer home with members of the public and the media as well. One of the things that's unchanged is the hurricane risk. The hurricanes are still a part of life in Southwest Florida. The virus doesn't really know or care about hurricanes, and hurricanes really don't know or care about the virus. So in that sense, there's no big change. The storm surge risk, like Dan talked about, is still there. The wind risk is still there if you live in a mobile home or houseboat or a home that may not be built as strong. So from that perspective, we still need people to have a family hurricane plan. On our website, you can go to, and it'll prompt you with questions to ask yourself and your family, and you can fill in the blank, and it makes it real simple to develop a hurricane plan. So that still needs to be done. Like Dan said, still want to have folks that do their hurricane shopping and buy their hurricane supplies. Do it now. It's not worth the stress of wait until we're in, the Hurricane Center's cone there to go out and fight the masses. So that still needs to be done. The app that Dan mentioned is called Lead Prepares. You can go to the Apple or Google store and download Lead Prepares. That app kind of walks you through all of the preparedness items you might need, how to develop a hurricane plan, how to find what your evacuation zone is, and a lot of really good information. We can also push texts and messages through that app. So that's one. The other one is Alertly. So if you go to alertly.com, this one's more really emergency life safety alert and warning tools. So if you put your information in there, we can hit you with a text message or phone call and an email, all the above really, when we announce things like evacuation zones and really life safety type warnings and notices. So again, a lot of things that are unchanged. On the evacuation side, going into this hurricane season, you still do need to evacuate if you're in one of those evacuation storm surge zones that we announce before every storm. As Dan talked about, every storm's a little bit different. So one storm may call for a larger evacuation, one storm may call for a smaller evacuation. So on our website, we have a Know Your Zone portal where you can type in your address and find out what evacuation zone you're in, A, B, C, D, or E. They're all color coded. It's pretty basic and simple to find out where you live. And that's really how we guide our evacuation. So we'll talk, all right, everybody in zone A is called to evacuate now. And then we'll slowly go farther inland based on the increasing storm surge threat. And Dan nailed it. We evacuate primarily for storm surge. These days, from a wind perspective, most newer homes are built very strong. And if you live outside of that surge evacuation zone, A, B, C, D, or an E, as we call it for each individual storm, then you're safe to stay at home. We don't want people unnecessarily evacuating. So, and that's been our message, throughout the years. But this year, we really want to double down on this idea that if you're not in one of our evacuation zones when we call it, and if you live in a safe structure, then you're safe to stay at home, and we want to limit those unnecessary evacuations. It's dangerous, it's stressful when people get on the road, and year after year, hurricane after hurricane, we really see people getting on the road and needlessly evacuating when they'd be safe in their homes, especially if you can, hang out with a little bit of, loss of power, or you don't have any of those medical issues that would need electricity in your home. So that's something we'll be doubling down on this year. But again, going back to, hey, this hasn't changed. If you are in one of those storm surge evacuation zones and live in a mobile home or houseboat, we still need you to go. Hurricane shelters this year, just like any other year, we want to preach the message that hurricane shelters for the county, so our schools that we work with the district on, some of our community centers really are the last resort. So we want to reserve those spots more so than ever this year for the folks that really don't have another option. So friend or family, find lodging outside of that immediate evacuation zone. You don't have to fly to Nebraska or Ohio. You can just really, we evacuate for that life safety reason. So as long as you're getting out of that immediate storm surge area, as we call it for each storm, and you get, in some sort of a safer structure from a wind perspective, then you're safe. We really don't need to needlessly evacuate and overdo it when it comes to evacuations. So again, a lot of those things really haven't changed. This year, it just gives us an opportunity with the virus being prevalent in our community to really reinforce the idea that, hey, maybe you don't want to go to a shelter if you have a better option. So we'll push that real hard this year. From a sheltering perspective, again, we still are going to have to provide sheltering, because any larger evacuation in Southwest Florida is going to be, in the thousands. It's not going to be just a handful or a neighborhood. It's usually a bigger number than that. In Irma, as everybody remembers, we had 35,000 folks come to shelters, and we would expect that something like that in a very large event this year again. But the changes we're making this year, or at least considering, would be the possibility of opening up additional shelters more than we normally would for any particular storm, to allow for spacing in the shelter, to allow for social distancing to the extent possible for any given storm. The square footage amount that we're used to is about 20 square feet per person. That's been the standard for years. So if we open up additional shelters, that would allow us to grow that number to maybe 40, 50, 60 plus square feet. We're going back and forth with the state and some of our counterparts in other counties to determine really what that planning number should be. So that's really the big one, is growing the amount of social distancing and spacing allowed in the sheltering environment. Everyone's used to face masks, I think, by now, when we go to the grocery store and out and about in the community. So having the community members going to shelters bring their own cloth face masks would be important, of course. Cleaning in the shelter more than we normally would in those sheltering environments, and preparing the public for the possibility of some screening questions as they go through the line and get into the shelter, just to determine if there's any illness, and then being able to add to that spacing if we have ill folks that show up in the shelters, which really is not a new concept. If someone were to walk into a hurricane shelter last year and they were visibly sick, then we would want to take those precautions as well and isolate that person in the shelter. So those are some of the things that we're looking at on the sheltering side. I think everybody would understand that those things may need to be put into place should the virus still be a concern. And but again, I go back to, we could use your help to really push the messages that haven't changed. Have a hurricane plan and only use your shelters at the county as a last resort, especially this year, will be even more important. And the final thing, more internal, we're looking at our Emergency Operations Center footprint. Many of you guys have been here in previous years for this event, and we're looking real closely at who really needs to be in the room if the virus is prevalent in the community when we get our next storm, and looking at our staffing plan and a number of other things here in the facility to be able to work remotely and establish better communications if folks are not sitting right next to each other. We had really a lot of people in here for Hurricane Irma, so we may have to look at who are the folks that really need to be here based on the phase of the event, pre-storm and post-storm. So Pam, I'll stop there. I know a lot of information there, but that's really been our message to the public so far this year. And as we know, we still have hopefully some time before the next hurricane, and we'll be able to adjust again, allowing us to have some options to choose from should the virus still be an issue this hurricane season. So Pam, again, thanks for letting me talk and for what everybody on the line here does for our community, especially in the last couple months. I know it's been a struggle, but we appreciate the partnership. So thanks a lot, Pam.
Thank you, Lee. Anybody have any questions? I see that we had one comment that somebody remembered about the space for shelters as being an issue. Anything else? Anybody questions for Lee? Thoughts, comments? Okay. Well, Amanda, why don't we launch poll number 2 and see what kind of response we get. Okay, have you read the hurricane manual that you know where it's at? Again, we have a few seconds here. Everybody answer as you would, and we'll get this one going. Because again, those of you who have been to my workshops before, I got to ask these questions every year, just as a reminder. We need a little background music. I'm not singing again.
Okay, it looks like the polling has stopped.
Okay,
The results are in. Have you read your hurricane manual? 52% of folks, yes, have read their hurricane manual. 12% of folks have not read their hurricane manual, and 36% have read some of it.
Oh, okay. Some is better than none. But hey, familiarize yourself with that wonderful manual, the location as well as what it says. And so we're going to get started with the VCB's portion. Thank you to both Lee and Dan. That was fabulous. Loved what you had to say, and hopefully we won't have to go out into the backyards at midnight and sacrifice a bucket of KFC. So these folks here are your VCB resource team here at the VCB. Me and Tommy and Josh, we're going to be manning the planning desk at the EOC. Just to give you a real quick review of how this came about, some of you may know the name Elaine McLaughlin. She was our former executive director for the VCB, and she worked with EOC staff about 35 years ago or a few plus, and they went up to see the results of what happened from Hurricane Hugo up in Charleston, because Charleston is a very similar community to what Lee County is. And they worked with the hoteliers, the emergency operators, as well as the city of Charleston and the CVB up there as to what worked, what didn't work, and that's how this program came about. So the VCB has had a seat at the planning table at the Lee County Command Center whenever there's an activation, and that's how we kind of get involved. And the planning table is considered the hub of communication at the EOC. They know everything that's going on. So Tommy and I are the ears and eyes of tourism over at the EOC when that happens. And Josh is back here in the office helping out and relieving us when necessary. But so we've got everybody. That room, that situation room at the EOC is just chock full of people. Head of fire departments, law enforcement, Red Cross, EMS, EMTs, hospitals, utilities. We got FPL and all sorts of people, water over there. So if there are issues, you can let any team member of the VCB know if there's an issue. Our information will also be out there to contact us directly, and you will be able to get a hold of us. And if there's something we can help you with, absolutely, we're gonna try and lend you a hand and maybe get something done a little bit quicker than maybe normal. But you know, you don't know until you ask. The worst we can say is we can't help you. We'll never say we don't know. We always have a line of communication with a whole bunch of people, and we're able to at least point you in a different direction. So this is our team, and I'm going to see if my little pointy thing works here. And it doesn't seem to. So Amanda, I'm going to give you the controls because I don't seem to have them. Okay, so our website is available, leevcb.com, and we have got all sorts of good things. This webinar recording will be sent out later today with a link to the recording on YouTube, and it will be posted on this website here, the link for this, as well as those handouts that I pointed out earlier. So you will be able to share this with maybe folks who were not able to attend. And there's other information on leevcb.com. You can go to the hurricane preparedness page and see what is there, what is useful. There's going to be some email action alerts on there. For the COVID, you see that we do have up in the blue bar there, we have COVID-19 updates. All of our blasts for COVID have been put up there, and the same will happen if there's an activation for a hurricane. Next slide. So Josh is going to take over from here and talk about social media.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Pam. So I think it's really easy, or I think we all could agree that there's so much information out there, especially when it comes to a significant weather event, if it's going to be impacting, Southwest Florida. We just wanted to share with you three departments that have pretty active social channels and work together to push out the same messaging. So here are three local resources to add to your hurricane preparedness toolkit from a social media perspective. we have the VCB Facebook page, the Lee Emergency Management Facebook and Twitter, as well as the Lee County Government Facebook and Twitter. You might have noticed in our current situation with COVID-19, all three are fairly active, and again, pushing that similar messaging. I think we all have a sense of responsibility as business managers, owners, or even just residents within the county to be sure we're sharing accurate information to help stop spread false information, and ultimately work together to push out that time sensitive updates, and social media is a perfect platform for that. So I encourage all of you to just take a peek, follow, like. You could even get notifications from each of those pages, but especially in the event of a significant weather event like a hurricane, definitely encourage you all to take a look. We already talked a little bit about Lee Prepares. That's Pam and I's homework assignment for all of you. We hope to see 66 new app downloads as soon as this webinar is over. I think it's really important from a resident standpoint. There's a lot of really great information in that we've already talked about, but it's nice because it's in one spot. So yeah, it's at the tip of your fingertips on your phone. I really do encourage you all to take a look and to share that with your staff as well.
Okay, next slide. All right, so preparedness and data collection, be as proactive as possible. Next. So in the past, you have been used to getting some surveys from us. Do you have a generator? Who is your manager on duty? We're going to be collecting this information. Probably we'll have it ready to send out second week in June. So it's going to be collected a little bit differently this year. We have, many of you are probably aware of the SimpleView extranet. If you're not, you'll be given a link to go there, and we're going to have all these questions that we normally ask in this very easily adapted database, so that you can fill it out. We can print reports and do some searches about who has what, and so that's going to be hopefully a little bit easier on your end, rather than asking all these different surveys and sending it out and making you crazy. It'll be one centralized function for you. And the reason why we ask this is because we get these questions. We'll often get calls from the public who are asking, what happens if I need to go to a hotel and I'm very capable. I don't need special assistance, but I do need some electricity. Who has a generator? And you could have a guest who needs something to run besides their iPhone. And for us, we usually ask, who's the manager on duty? Who's your front desk manager that we can get in touch with if we have questions? Are you open? Are you closed? What do you have that's running? Do you have running water? Do you have electricity? Do you have food and beverage available for you? So things of that nature. And then we also ask, next screen, Amanda. Josh, you want to take this one?
Absolutely, thanks Pam. So depending on the storm severity, are you equipped to remain open for residents or guests who are perhaps evacuated? This is a really important question that it's really helpful for us at the VCB to know in advance, because again, we are at the EOC, we are working, so if we catch wind that there's a group of residents or a group of hotel guests who are having challenges leaving the area or the destination during a storm, it's really nice to have some resources in our back pocket that we can give a call over to the property to see if there's a potential room available for them. We have a program at the county where we work with distressed visitors, and we call it the Distressed Visitor Assistance Program. And what this is a year-round approach and activation for us, but we become incredibly active with it during hurricanes. We work at essentially placing people. So if there's a rate by chance that you could have to help alleviate some of those additional expenses this person might be undergoing because of the need to leave where they currently are, that's also really great for us to know. So thinking about a distressed rate, for these residents or visitors in advance, again, helps alleviate those stresses and helps better prepare us at the VCB to help place those individuals. This last note is again new this year. Lee was talking about what the county is doing in preparation for sheltering those in a COVID-19 world. This is really important information, I think, to have on hand in general, like not just for hurricanes, but moving forward in what we are calling our new normal for hotel guests. Have a list of your cleaning, process, your disinfectant process in relationship to COVID-19. What are you doing, within your business walls that are helping prevent the spread of COVID-19? This is something that I think hotel guests or attraction guests are going to be wanting to know when they are coming into your facility, and this is no different if they're evacuating because of a hurricane. So equipping those front desks, those frontline employees to be able to answer some of those questions, I think is going to really make the process a lot easier for everybody and ultimately make people feel most comfortable in the situation that is ultimately very uncomfortable. So just a little bit of a tip from us at the VCB to you.
Something else on that list of cleaning disinfection processes. The calls that we get when we're at the EOC are from crews, FPL, maybe contractors of debris removal companies. I'm anticipating maybe having these folks ask the question, due to the pandemic, I need to prove that you are a hotel that has a list of processes that you do for cleaning and whatnot. Maybe they have to turn that in with their bill. A lot of these folks are going to be governmental workers, and it just may be something additional that they need to submit when they go for reimbursement or on their credit cards and whatnot. So that just a quick list that you can hand out at checkout or check-in, and something that's on a PDF that you can send our way if we're asked for it. So just some thoughts, not telling you that you have to do it or anything. Just one of those just in case things. Josh?
Exactly, yep. Additional preparation for you all, I think, and Dan had a really good point about specific preparations in reference to your staff. It's really important that you have, a hurricane plan for your business, but that a portion of that plan includes, your staff in the sense of their personal lives. Are they able to spend time at home preparing their own homes? What is their family's plan? I think these are really good conversations to have with your staff to encourage them to begin thinking about what that process might look like for them, and how you can work with them to balance business prep and personal preparation. Because as Dan said, the more prepared your staff is, the more likely they are to return, and I think the more focused they'll be able to be at work to, of course, achieve that common goal of preparing the business for the storm. To Pam's note prior, who is staying on property. So if you are going to have a staff member, perhaps it's the GM or front office manager, somebody that's going to be at the property during the actual event of the storm, who might that person be? That's really important to predetermine, again, because everybody has their work life and their personal life. And in order for people to make those appropriate adjustments ahead of the storm, they need to know in advance. It's also really important information for us to know at the VCB, again, for that point of contact. So that's why those surveys are super important. So we have a point of contact on property that's the correct person that can help answer some of those specific questions for us. If you plan to evacuate before the storm, so let's just say you're not going to have anybody on site, it's just not a safe atmosphere to be in, who might that person be? Who's going to return to the property? Who might that be following the storm? Again, very important to predetermine so they can align those personal plans, those personal evacuation plans with coming back to check on the property when it's safe to do so. Do you have a process in place for contacting staff after the storm passes? At the Visitor and Convention Bureau, we use a phone tree. So ultimately, if you're not familiar with what a phone tree is, it's one person calls the next. So we have it broken down by, from the top down and breaking into teams. So ultimately, each person is responsible for calling and checking on another. It's not only important for spreading information, perhaps on when you might return to work or what the situation is, it's also important to check on each other, to make sure that you're safe and to make sure that nobody needs anything specific. I think you definitely see people come together often, during times of high stress or during crises, and hurricanes are no exception to that. So making sure that you're checking on your staff is important, and of course being there for each other, because that's how you recover faster, of course. So next slide. The last thing I wanted to talk to you guys about, and We talked a little bit briefly about this, the Lee County Special Needs Shelter Program. This is in addition to the general population public shelters. We wanted to call attention to this specifically this year in reference to COVID-19 because there might be an added layer of hesitation for people if they're perhaps in a home that might not be safe, or maybe they've been evacuated for the storm, and they might be thinking about a shelter. Well, they might have certain medical needs that need to be attended to or that are important. So we wanted to just call attention to this program. You might not be aware. You must register in advance. You have to update your information annually. So if you've registered for a special needs shelter program, or you've had a loved one register for a special needs shelter program in the past, you need to update it this year. One thing to note about this is the county stops processing applications once the area enters the 5-day forecast cone. So this is something that should be part of your plan and preparation. So you can go ahead and submit an application. The Department of Health will review that and deem whatever assistance you might need and where you might be best placed. So again, this is available to Lee County residents at no cost, and there's actually even a method of transportation through Lee Trans. So if you have troubles getting to the actual shelter that you've been approved to be in, Lee Trans can help move you around. So it's really a phenomenal program. I really recommend that you share this with your friends and family and even your staff, because if there's anyone in our lives, whether it might be our parents or grandparents or people with pre-existing medical conditions that become more at risk in times of an evacuation, this might be a program for them. If you have specific questions on it, feel free to give the team a call at 239-533-0640. That number's at the bottom of your screen. It's also available at legov.com. Ask there's specific questions there. It doesn't hurt to apply. If you think you might that might be a good program for you, it doesn't hurt to ask those questions now ahead of a storm.
Thanks, Josh. Okay, so now we've got a quick chat on strategic partnerships. Go ahead. All right, so you've heard us talk about public-private business relationships before. As we have experienced during this COVID-19 pandemic, it's so important to be able to reach out to your business neighbors, be they hotel, dining, somebody with a big parking lot, especially during a hurricane issue. Maybe we've got some big trucks that come in, some RVs that's the way a crew travels or transport themselves. So business to the VCB, yeah, it's so important just to keep us informed. For the county, we're the voice of tourism when something starts to go haywire and crosswise. So any information that you can convey through the questions that we ask, the things that pop up on the Simple View extranet, any bits of information, if you can share that with us, that would be absolutely wonderful. Hotel to hotel, maybe talk to some of your compatriots. Hotel business to the local F&B operation. Maybe you're a small hotel that doesn't have F&B. You've got a neighbor who is a restaurant. Maybe you can work a partnership there. Local charities, the Red Cross, if they need a place to put their Red Cross feeding truck, maybe that's something that you can help out. Local citizens, some of the suggestions that have been brought up in the past, if there's a really simple contract that maybe the hotels could put out there for local citizens who call the VCB and say, which hotel should I evacuate to? And my response to these folks has always been, hey, make friends with a hotelier that is out of a flood zone, not in your area. Although with Irma, we found out that that didn't matter when the hurricane came straight up the middle of the peninsula of Florida. But we encourage the local population to do this on their own. If it's something that the hotel can offer as far as a simple contract, you'll give us a call when there's when we're in the cone, something of that nature. again, not telling you that this is a requirement or a have to, just suggestions on maybe how to deal with the public in a little bit different way. Let's see, Amanda, if you want to go to the next one. So after a storm, if there's some community needs that come out of this, go ahead. How can you help? So this is the question we ask. Are you open? Do you have power, water? Are you close to a restaurant or two that's open and available? These are the questions that we're going to ask of you. And if you can convey that information back to us, we're going to put crews in. And you know, my philosophy at the EOC is, hey, these folks are here to help us. And the more people that we have in who are going to help us recover, the faster we get back to making money. And at the end of every day, I want everybody who has asked me for a hotel room to have a place to lay their little pumpkin heads. And that's all there is to it. These guys need some rest. These men and women are hardworking. With Irma, excuse me, we had a crew from Alaska come in. And God bless them, we got them in a hotel down in the southern part of the county. It was the closest we could get them. And for the first couple of days, they didn't have electricity. But by golly, that hotel treated them like kings and queens. And they were able to work with them. And we worked with FPL and said, you know, we've got these crews in this certain location. If there's anything you can do. And again, no promises. But FPL came through for us, and they were able to get electricity a little bit sooner than later to this area. And you know, again, it's however we can help get our county back up and running. That's what we got to do. Let's see. I think we're coming into the home stretch here, which is good because we got a couple minutes. Here's the contact information for me, Tommy, and Josh. We're available. I hate to say it, but as the past has taught us many lessons, 24/7. So if you've got questions, I mean, I've been called at night by EOC saying, "Hey, we had a twist up with some hotel rooms, and the hotel rooms promised to this crew weren't available." So off we go. And again, expect probably second week in June, you're going to be contacted for your hurricane information, and we'll have it very well spelled out for you. And are there any questions, any thoughts or predicaments that you've thought of while we've chatted here? Please put those in your chat and send those to us. We're happy to ask. As this is posted on our website later, we'll also, if there's any questions that we haven't answered, we'll definitely send those out and post them. Amanda, I think you've got one more poll to give to everybody. Let's launch that. All right, when was the last time your hurricane manual was updated? 2020, 2019, or 2018 or later? Everybody cast your vote. I know here at the VCB, we try to go through it every couple years for any updates. Josh, bless his heart, is updating our pandemic section in our crisis manual. Amanda, how we doing?
All right, it looks like folks have, a couple more coming in.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. So it looks like 24% of people have updated their hurricane manual for 2020.
Okay.
71%, the numbers just changed. Make that 22%. 74% of people updated their hurricane manual in 2019. And 5% of people's hurricane manual is from 2018 or later.
Okay. So as we go through and have these experiences, if your hurricane manual is actually a crisis manual, then you can update it for the pandemic. And if it's just a hurricane manual, maybe we change it to a crisis manual. We have wildfires and all sorts of different things that we're experiencing in our in our generation, our lifetime, and you just never know what's going to pop up. Any questions come in? Amanda, Thomas, Annie?
Looks like we have not received any new questions, but I think folks really enjoyed the polls, Pam.
Great. Good. Tam, any parting thoughts?
No, I just appreciate everybody really getting ahead of this. I think it's really important, especially given the current challenges that, we have solid plans in place that exactly how you're going to handle not only your personal life, but your professional life in this. And, I'm doing every seance, prayer, dance possible to ensure we don't have a hurricane right now.
Absolutely.
But no matter what, we need to be prepared in case we do, and that's what today's about. And for those of you who have participated, we're grateful for your participation, and for those of you who watch this after today, we appreciate you getting on top of your plan as well. Josh, Pam, Tommy, resources for you should you have questions. Please reach out to us and consider us, available to help you. It's really important that we're here for you during this, and any questions we're happy to answer. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Pam. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody. This was great. And again, just reach out. We're available for any question. No, there is no stupid question. There is no nonsensical question. We've heard them all, and I know there's some new stuff out there. So give us a call, shoot us an email, and we'll talk to you on the other side. June 1, coming next week. Thanks all. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.